Welcome to Revitalize and Replant with Mark Clifton, where we equip pastors to take their churches from declining to thriving by pointing them to a new future and a new hope. Join us weekly for encouragement and practical advice in your pastoring journey.
Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. I'm here today with my good friend, Mark Hallock. We're here among the mountains in Denver.
That's
I love coming out here, bro. I really do.
It's beautiful, man.
It is so pretty. I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but in Kansas, we really don't have very many mountains. We really don't.
Any, like literally, is there any place to ski?
There is the highest point in Kansas, but it's like a tiny hill because it's in the high plains. So you go to the highest point in Kansas, you can't really even tell what it is.
Okay, so listen, growing up there, could you sled? Like, do you even know what sledding down a hill?
No, I have no idea. We pulled behind a tractor. That's what we did.
That's how you did.
Yeah,
okay.
You know, we always say in Kansas, your dog can run away, and 3 days later you can still see him. Or you get altitude sickness on an overpass.
Yeah, I believe it.
You know, you've heard all those.
It's a little different here.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad you're here, man.
Well, I'm glad to be here too. We're going to talk about today why church attendance, regular church attendance, is becoming less regular. And then the next episode, we're going to try to deal with what to do about that.
Good.
But look, you and I, we deal in declining churches and churches that are in trouble and churches that are struggling and churches just plateaued. And I hear all the time, hey, our people are just not regular anymore. You know, when I was a kid, my dad pastored for all my life. I grew up in a pastor's home, and back in the 60s and 70s. And back in those days, if my dad had deacons, they would arrange their vacations so they would only be gone one Sunday. Right?
That's crazy.
And
That's crazy.
you just weren't gone on Sundays. You were at church on Sunday. Now, you can call that legalism. You can call it a cultural bias. I don't know. But we live in a day now where, I mean, if people want to be gone on Sunday, they're going to be gone. They're going to go camping. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Rayner has said that now people consider themselves to be active in a church if they attend 1.5 times a month.
Wow.
If they just show up a little more than once a month, they go, yeah, I'm active there. Now, that wouldn't have been the case 20 years ago. People would have realized I'm not active in that church.
Right.
So that has had an
huge
impact.
Shift.
Yeah. You know, when I was and I'm going to ask you some questions here in a minute, but back in the day when I was at Warnell, one of the ways we counted people, rather than counting them every Sunday, which we did, sort of, but basically twice a year, spring and fall, we would count everybody who came during a month, right? Mm-hmm. Every individual. And we realized while on any given Sunday we might have 100 people, throughout that month we had close to 200 different individuals who came.
Right. That's right.
That has a lot of implications in a lot of ways.
I mean, the same thing's here. I mean, we say two times a month is a regular attender at our church. In fact, you know, we've talked a little bit about how we shepherd people here. And so every Monday night we look at our whole attendance list, and it is literally, it's like 50-50. If everybody shows up at this, there's no way we're fitting them all here. So we're trying to keep track of those who say, even though you're right, they didn't maybe grow up in the church coming every week, if they're here 2 out of 4, man, they're like regular attenders.
Well, and one thing you have to think about is if they consider themselves a regular attender, then they sort of consider that you need to give them ministry.
That's right.
Anyway, okay, here we go. There are many reasons, and you can add to these. You can call in right now on our toll-free number. No, I guess we don't do that.
Kyle's just waiting.
Kyle's over here just waiting. Dan will pick up the phone. You can add to this. You can put some comments in wherever you put comments on this thing. But these are 5 reasons we have discovered that church attendance is not regular as perhaps it used to be. Tell us about the first one, Mark.
Okay, the first one is the increase, and this is true everywhere in the U.S., I think, pretty much, is increase in kids' sports and recreation activities.
You know, there was a time when they didn't do sports and recreations on Sundays. I mean,
I've never lived in that time.
I lived in that time.
I've never lived in that day.
You just didn't do it on Sundays because people went to church. But today, it's always on Sunday.
Constant.
And the more people involve their kids in sports, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
the tension between sports and church?
It is. I mean, and it's hard. And listen, I'll speak as one who sports was a really big part of my life. I mean, I played basketball and tennis, I did track. And so I get it. Like, I understand, like, especially former athletes, you want your kids to experience. There's so much good about kids sports and learning, at the same time, we've become obsessive about it. And I do a seminar here at our church on sports, being a Christian parent with kids with sports, because it's such an issue of how do you prioritize the church when you've got coaches that demand from little kids what used to be demanded of college athletes. It's insane. And so I think the bottom line is this. I think you have to make a decision for your family, and it's difficult, but your kids can't do everything. They can't be part of every club team and the school team. And they'll take your whole life. And so I think there's a lot of parents that struggle with that because they have this idea that their kid is somehow going to be the next LeBron James or something. And this is where, as pastors, sometimes we need to lovingly say, listen, your kid's not going to be the next LeBron James, and so what are you doing to nurture their heart in these years? Because you got one shot as a parent, right? And yet even with that, the pressure of the culture, which is really what we're talking about, it's just constant. If you're a good parent, your kids are going to do everything. That's the mindset.
Yeah, and here we are in Denver, right? What a sports city, right? The Nuggets just won the whole thing.
Yep.
And people love your football team. They love them no matter what, even though they're not very good, the Broncos right now. And I'm from Kansas City. What's going on? What's going on with the Mahomes? Of course, the Royals are now in last place of all baseball, not just.
Well, and I'm sure the Rockies are not far behind.
Rockies are not. But and also, of course, I have KU, K-State, and all that stuff. By the way, Colorado's going to join the new Big 12. Isn't that cool?
We could do a whole podcast on that.
We could, but here's the deal, and this isn't original with me. But, parents love to immediately, when the baby's born, they'll go out and they'll buy like a future Jayhawk baby bib, right? Or they'll buy a future Chief baby bib, you know? And then as the kid grows up, they keep buying him all kinds of gear, and they indoctrinate the kid that this is our team and this is who we are. And they'll teach about the history of the team and all the great things, and they can't wait to take them to the games, and they'll spend all kinds of money. You think, what if Christian parents were that intensive about indoctrinating and discipling their kids in Christ?
Amen.
This is who we are.
Amen.
It comes so natural for us to do that for our teams.
That's right.
But it can be so difficult as parents to sometimes do that for our kids. And I think that's one of the reasons our kids begin to value sports more than they value church, because they see the parents getting more excited and more involved and more committed and wanting to go to the games. And listen, it's a whole deal. We all know parents live vicariously through their kids anyway. That's a whole nother topic for another day. But really, I think one of the things we look at, and you brought it up really well, we have to deal with the constant tension between letting the kids be involved in sports, but saying you can't be in everything.
That's right.
And I know some pastors who personally just said, we're not going to do travel on Sunday. And it means we can't do the game. We're not doing it. Because we have to make some kind of commitment here.
Right.
Otherwise, we're sending incredibly mixed signals to our kids.
That's exactly right.
That church is important, but so is this. So when they grow older and go to college, what are they going to do?
Don't be surprised when they leave the church.
Right.
That's right. Here's number two. Number two is this: increased emphasis on vacation, travel, and leisure. Now, I'm saying this in Colorado, okay? So, those mountains are calling all the time. Are you kidding me? And it's a real issue. It's a real challenge. What about like in Kansas? What's it in Kansas?
Well, you want to get away from Kansas. The best thing to come out of Kansas is I-35, I-70. No, that's not really true. But again, I go back. I know I'm an old man, but I go back when I was a kid, and basically it was a one-income family. Most people lived in a relatively small house. You might have 3 kids, but you'd have, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Might have 4 kids, 2 bedrooms. That's what we had. And you didn't take very many vacations. You might take one a year, like I said. But now it's like people are always traveling. They're always taking vacations. They're always camping, or they're glamping, or they're always going somewhere. We're in a culture that deeply hungers for experiences, right?
Right.
And, when years ago, experience was community at home. It was community with the family. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but we're always planning the next trip. And again, what doesn't come into play anymore, even in the minds of people who consider themselves regular church attenders, is, well, we've already missed 2 Sundays. We shouldn't miss a third. Like, we don't care. We got, going to grandma's. We're going to go camping. I've got this conference I want to go to, this retreat I want to go to. And so the way people travel, the way they do leisure, even the young guys that I work with when I was at Warnell and stuff, love those young families, but man, if they wanted to go see grandma in Iowa, they'd go see grandma in Iowa.
Going.
They didn't ever say, what's that going to do to the church situation? How do I find someone to fill in? And basically, again, what am I telling my kids?
Yes.
And then, do you go to church when you're away? Right?
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
No, I know. Well, that's so. Well, and here's the other thing is this: how does that affect community and building relationships? Listen, if you're gone all the time for kids, number one. Number two, you're on vacation all the time. How is that affecting the community, the relationships in your church? And here's what we know in church revitalization. One of the most crucial pieces is forming a deep, loving community among the people of deep care. And the only way that happens is through time together.
Right.
And if I only seen you once in a while, it's really hard to become close brothers or sisters in the Lord. And so there has to be a commitment. And that's a huge challenge in our day. What I was going to say about going to church when you're not at your church at home is we're going to actually get to it number 5.
Yeah.
And that is, I think a lot of folks are defaulting with an online option, which I'm not a big fan of.
No.
But it is what it is. So let's move on to number 3 though,
all right.
which is blended families. This is interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't really think about this, but with blended families, and they're more and more all the time, you've got kids who spend one weekend with one parent and then another weekend with another parent. And so that does impact how often they are in church, because they may be across town, even in a different town. Maybe they're one weekend a month with their dad, that kind of thing. Also, if mom and dad, if they have a certain set of kids that come in one weekend a month, do they spend more time with them? I think it's just something we need to be. I don't think we're fully aware of the impact of blended families and shared weekends and shared holidays. How that impact, and I think as a pastor, you need to be aware of that.
Absolutely,
you need to be deeply aware of it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, I'm thinking of a family in our church. Unfortunately, a couple that's going through divorce. And one of the things our pastors have talked about is we need to be extra intentional, not only with mom and dad, but those kiddos, because they're not going to be, they're going to be they'll be here one Sunday and another. And some of these kids, they're teenagers. And it's like, these are key years. So pastorally, you've got to be really intentional. This is what I would call proactive shepherding, not just reactive shepherding. Like you need to pursue them, not just wait for them to show up to you. But blended families is another one. Here's number 4.
Well, hang on.
Okay, go ahead.
Also on blended families.
Yeah.
You need to be sensitive to those kids that they can't be here every week.
Well, right, exactly.
So if you've got Sunday school teachers and youth workers who say, man, you guys need to be here every week, the kid can't be there every week.
Totally.
So you
Give him a guilt trip.
just need to be aware of the situation that kid is in and be grateful when he's there.
Man, that's true.
That's a different thing altogether. We should do a whole podcast on how the best to minister and care for blended families. By the way, I'll give you this one. Here's a freebie. All right, turn up the radio. All right, pull the car off the side of the road.
We need some sound effect at this point.
I know. Quit jogging or whatever you do. Do not ever use the phrase or the term or the adjective broken family as a pastor.
Why?
Don't ever.
Why?
Because there's a kid sitting there from such a family.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
Now, to say, man, you're from all these broken homes, like the kid already goes, man, I'm from a broken home. Look, don't lay that on the kid, all right?
Yeah, that's so true.
I'm not trying to lessen the impact of divorce and the pain that it causes. But when a child hears someone like a pastor say, all these broken homes, immediately he has nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
he
that's
didn't
so
break
true.
the home.
Yeah.
And he doesn't need to be reinforced in church that he's from a busted, broken home and the kid sitting next to him is not.
Yeah.
I mean, God can be gracious in any situation.
Amen.
So just be careful about that.
That's really good.
And also, while I'm on a roll, one of the things as pastors you can do, and I would encourage you to do this, when you have some people in your church who have blended families and you hear some husband say, well, I got to go pick up my ex's kids today, or the ex is bringing the kids over today.
Yeah.
You just need to lovingly say, brother, can I just ask you to do something? Why don't you right now intentionally determine you're never going to call your former spouse my ex?
Man.
Because that's that kid's mother.
That's right.
And when you say my ex, you're talking about his mother.
Yep.
Or if you say my ex, you're talking about his dad. From now on, I want you to refer to that to your former spouse as, Greg's mom or Kathy's mom or my kid's mom, because that's who they are, or my kid's dad.
Man, that's
and
good.
Stay away from using that term ex. Again, because it really impacts the kid to hear my dad's called somebody's ex.
That's
my
exactly
mom's called
right.
somebody's ex.
Well, along those same lines, my parents went through a divorce when I was a sophomore in high school. Really difficult time, and I love my parents. But one of the greatest gifts they gave to my brother, sister, myself, is they never talk negatively about the other in front of us. And that's one of the things that pastorally, the damage that does to a kid, if you're just trashing the other in front, and as Christians, divorce is hard enough. And so I'm just saying amen to you, that we need to be mindful.
Okay, the last reason we have on our list of reasons why church attendance is less regular. We've already said that because of increased sports activities with kids, because of increased vacations and travel, because of blended families and their schedule, an unwillingness to engage in commitments long term. It's kind of like, back in the day, again, I always say back in the day, but, I was a teenager, we get these things in the middle of TV Guide, and you could get 10 cassettes for a dime if you agreed to buy. This is the RCA Cassette Club. Or albums or cassettes. If you agreed to buy 2 a year for the next 10 years or something, you had to sign up for this club, right? People don't sign up for long-term clubs anymore.
No.
Ever.
No.
Even phone. Back when we first started getting cell phones, you'd be tied up to these long-term contracts. And now all these companies are saying, we have no contracts.
Oh, yeah.
And same thing.
Everything.
And when we first started doing rental of movies, you'd go to a rental place, you'd have to pay a huge fee just to be in the membership. And you'd have to have this membership.
That's right.
Okay, so people do not want long-term contracts. They don't want memberships. And I think that does lead over into, I'll come to your church.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sort of self-define my own pathway religiously.
Yeah.
I'll come to this church because I like this preacher right now, but there's another church over here, and I really like their music, and it's okay if I just go wherever.
That's true.
There is so much of that where people do not want to make commitments, and they want to. It's kind of like your iPhone. One of the things people love about iPhones is you get to download whatever app you want.
Oh, yeah.
You get to personalize it.
Yep.
And people want to personalize their worship experience and their religious experience. You want to
No, that's so true. Well, we joke around, and it's not a joke, but it's true, that the only thing people are committed to is being non-committal. And that's what we see over and over. And I think one of the biggest issues in how this relates to and affects the local church is church membership.
Oh, yeah.
So again, we see people who have no problem joining Sam's Club, but when it comes to joining a local church, they're very hesitant. And that's a real problem. Yeah. And this is something where, again, I would say practically we need to be preaching and teaching biblically on what church membership is, why it's important, the one another's. We can't practice the one another's unless we're willing to commit to one another.
And again, many of the churches we deal with are sort of stuck in the 1970s.
Yeah.
That's kind of where they are mentally. And in the 1970s, when a Christian family moved into the neighborhood, they looked for a church. They, as quick as they could, they would join that church. That is just not the case anymore. It's not the case. People will come for years and never join.
That's right.
And I've had discussions with them, and they just sort of put you off like, well, yeah, we really enjoy it. It's like, well, what's the problem here? But it's just, and if you don't join, then you don't have to keep coming.
That's right.
So there's
no accountability. Now listen, we need to throw in number 5. There's a fifth,
quickly.
Okay?
Go ahead.
Online options.
Oh, isn't that the...
Oh, man. Okay, how is that affecting regular church attendance, especially, I would say, COVID and post-COVID? Because that's where, and Rainer, there's been a lot of studies showing how attendance, those who used to come 2 out of 4 are now 1 out of 4.
Right.
Because of online church.
What
give us some thoughts on online
church? Some guys I see talk about, hey, here are our options: live service, online, and on demand. And they talk about, those are your 3 options: live service, on time, and live service, online,
and
on demand.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it's not a prize fight, all right? I mean,
it's not a pay-per-view.
No, it's not a pay-per-view. And it just gives people sort of I can't be there Sunday, but I can always watch it.
Yeah.
It's like, that is not the same thing. Yeah. Now, I want to be real careful.
Sure. I know where you're going.
I heard
yep.
just the other day, a guy who was completely resistant to the gospel, did not want to go to church, wouldn't talk to his neighbor about Jesus. But one day his neighbor, this is an actual true story, the neighbor was a pastor. Pastor was taking his garbage out, bringing his garbage back in, saw his neighbor, said, hey, how you doing? And his neighbor said, I'm doing well. By the way, I really enjoy your sermon series. I've been watching it online. And he's an unbeliever who never wanted to go to church.
Yep.
Okay, there's a place for that.
Right.
But the place for that is not so that regular attenders can say, well, today we're going to stay home, or this week we're going to go camping, and we can always watch it online.
Right.
I don't think we needed a whole podcast on. We needed a whole series on that. I don't think we yet understood the dynamic of COVID and encouraging people to watch online. Like, we didn't need to encourage people to be any less engaged in corporate worship. Our flesh already wants to be less engaged.
No, that's right. Yep.
So we shouldn't make it easier to be less engaged in corporate worship.
And of course, we have elderly folks in those who, for whatever reason, but again, those are exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
So anyway,
all right.
Those are 5 reasons people are becoming less regular in church attendance.
If you can hang on for 48 hours, 2 days from now, we're going to drop this one on ways to increase the commitment to the gathered
That's
church.
Right.
So there is hope out there, right, Hurst? Take us home, Dan.
Thanks for joining us today on Revitalize and Replant. This podcast is brought to you by the North American Mission Board, where we help dying or struggling churches regain health for the glory of God and the good of their communities. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. To learn more about becoming a replanting pastor or to explore resources about revitalization for your own church, visit churchreplanters.com.